Mr. Chair, and as soon as the live stream is going, if you want to call the meeting to order and then just kind of walk through the agenda, we can get moving here.
Okay, the live stream is up and running.
Okay, Mark.
Okay. I'll call the meeting of the Board of Adjustment to order, and we'll have the roll call. I'll just call on your names. Crystal, are you present?
Here.
Just a second, I gotta get my Barb.
Here.
Jill
Here.
Marine.
Here.
Tim Lanau.
Here.
And Patrick McCoy. Patrick, can you hear me?
Here.
Okay.
I'm here. I can hear you.
Okay. Bob, minutes approval for October 19th. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes that Bob sent out in the email?
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the October 19th, 2020 meeting?
So moved.
Motion made by Tim Lanu. Was that Crystal that seconded?
Yep.
Crystal Halverson was second. Andrea, if I don't have it, be sure to let me know that I need to make sure that I do it right. So, public comments. Bob informed me just previous to the meeting that
Mr. Chair, you might want to finish your motion on the minutes. I mean, you had a second.
Yep.
There was some discussion or a vote on it.
Yep. All those in favor say aye of approving the minutes.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. For public comment, Bob informed me just before the meeting started that he didn't have any requests for public comments, so we will go to number 5 on the agenda. Bob, do you want to read the publication of the public notices?
Yeah. So just for the record, there was a typo, and I don't know if everyone caught the typo, but I know that some did, and I had one call on it. It says special exception permit at the top of the public notice. Special exception permit to expand the existing non-metallic mine. This was a cut and paste error on my fault. Originally, we were going to have a non-metallic mine this month for you folks to act on. I couldn't get everything in time, and then the applicant came on, and so I switched, but I didn't catch that, and so it went out that way. It was a typo, but we didn't really get any real confusion out of it. So having put that in the record, in accordance with the provisions of section 19.84 Wisconsin statutes, public notice is hereby given to all residents in the town of Stanton that the Dunn County Board of Adjustment will hold a public hearing on Monday, February 15, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. This meeting will be held by teleconference. The applicant, Timothy Stauffer, E681 751 Avenue, Knapp, Wisconsin 54749, has made a special exception permit request to operate an agriculture entertainment venue on property described as the southeast one quarter of the northwest one quarter and all that part of the northeast one quarter of the southwest one quarter lying north of the right-of-way and between the old and new right-of-way of Chicago, St. Paul, Minneapolis, and Omaha Railway. All in section 31, town 29 north, range 14 west, town of Stanton, Dunn County, Wisconsin. And this meeting was published. This notice was published, and we did get certification back from the newspaper on this. And so there was notice on here for people wishing to comment. We did not receive any wishes to comment. And so with that, Mr. Chair, if you would like, I could go into the staff report.
Yep, just keep going, Bob.
Okay. So some of you have been with the board long enough that, let me put everything on mute. Wouldn't you know it? Of course, it's going to.
That's what happened to me too.
Yeah. So
Andrea, don't record the phone calls.
well, I'm going to put everything on mute here. So most of us, some of us have been through this before. We have 3 or 4 other ag entertainment venues in the county. A lot of them fairly similar. And so a lot of the analysis and a lot of the stuff that's in your report is cut and paste also from the other ones that we've listened to. So with that, I'll just give a bit of background. I will go through staff's analysis all the way through to the recommendation, and then I will stop and see if there's questions, and then I will turn it back over to the board to see if he wants to swear the applicant in and go from there. So so as per 13.207, Tim Stauffer is seeking a special exception permit to operate their barn as a wedding venue and other related events. And so there's, a wedding venue or ag entertainment is a pretty broad umbrella for things that they can do there. For events and structures that are deemed ag entertainment, and so from the DNR is required background. What happened here?
Yeah, I was wondering that.
Oh, here we go, guys. It goes onto the other page here, onto the right here. So so just so we know that that he's able to use his lands, his buildings, and for the 2 properties that are described in the special exception hearing, those are the ones that that this permit will be valid for. And just so that we understand, he has a barn. And normally, in order to have something of this scale, it's a commercial venue, and applicants usually have to go and meet the commercial building code, which requires bathrooms and sprinklers and all kinds of things that just for an ag entertainment venue just don't make it feasible. So there is a provision that the Department DSPS, Department of Service and Public Services, has, that they will allow a temporary use permit, provided that the local fire department can inspect and sign off that they will issue that permit. That permit is good 180 calendar days. And it's annual, so you do have to redo this every year. You have to get back with the fire chief and go through that to get that special that temporary use permit every year from that. And so our analysis is how the proposal is consistent with the county's comprehensive land use plan. Our comp plan is pretty general when it comes to agriculture, and most of Dunn County is ag related. Our zoning ordinance recognizes ag entertainment as a use that is allowed with a special exception permit, and so it is consistent with their land use plan, which is also then consistent with the zoning ordinance. The next one is when lands are impacted by intensive ag or primary ag, how it's consistent with the county's farmland preservation plan. This property is on general ag, so this bullet point is not applicable. How the proposal is in conformance with the county's zoning ordinance and standards in which it's located. I just spoke about that. 13.2.8.07 indicates that this use is allowed with a special exception permit, and that's what Mr. Stauffer is here requesting. How the proposal is in conformance with the county's shoreline ordinance. you know, the property, even though there's an intermittent stream that goes through, then we'll talk about that a little bit later. There is no floodplain on the property. There are some wetlands, and I will show you where those are a little bit later in the presentation. But there is an intermittent stream, and so our shoreline ordinance does apply. And I'll show you a sketch also. So remember this, that the applicant is going to need, I'm guessing he's going to need a permit from the DNR to cross that stream, because that's going to be where his main parking is going to be. And so from a shoreline standpoint, there are no setbacks that we're going to require. We'll be concerned about erosion control and making sure that any DNR permits are issued. I would mention this to the applicant, that this permit, if granted, is good for a year. If you don't finish up your improvements, whatever they are, if you're going to do any improvements to the parking lot as part of this permit, you need to have those finished within 1 year. If it goes beyond a year, and you haven't contacted my office, and we can extend it, you know, for a reasonable amount of time. Beyond that, you will probably have to come back and get a shoreline permit to finish up any kind of improvements that you want to do after the 1 year from when this permit is expired. And you can question me on that in a bit, Mr. Stoffer, if that doesn't make sense when it's your turn to speak. So if that doesn't make sense, put a little question mark by that, and we'll bring you up to speed a little later in the meeting here. So how the proposal is in conformance with the county sanitation ordinance. There will be some temporary facilities, either the outhouses, or maybe in the future some holding tanks and some temporary funds. But regardless, there will be some sort of a sanitation permit will be required, even if it's the porta potties. And so we'll work with the applicant to make sure that he understands what we need. And we talked about it. It's not in the floodplain, so the floodplain ordinance is not applicable. In conformance with the other outside agencies, limited to the DOT, the Department of Natural Resources, DADCAP, FEMA, you know, and here I put the only, other than the stream crossing permit from the DNR, all other outside agencies will not be involved. As I was looking at it just this afternoon, and I'll show you a little bit later on, and I'll talk about this, the town road does intersect with the state highway. And so I did put a call into the DOT just to have a discussion with them about that. I haven't received a call back. And so we'll talk about that as maybe a part of a condition of the application, to make sure that the DOT is also okay with what's going on here. The measures which have been or will be taken to ensure the proposal will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of adjacent property owners and to other property owners in the immediate vicinity for purposes already permitted. In talking with the applicant and just looking at it, and we'll be able to see that with some maps here, distance to adjacent neighbors and topography are probably the two things that are in the applicant's favors. There's really two homes that are maybe within earshot, and one of those is a seasonal use, and one is a full-time use, and I'll point those out to you when we get to the maps. So we don't think that that's going to be an issue in terms of being a nuisance to the neighbors. Measures which have been will be taken to provide sufficient off-street parking and loading to serve the proposal. And so I think in the packet that you got, the applicant, there are 2 parking lots that are shown, and we'll go over those in a little bit more detail when we get to the mapping pieces of it. But you know, with these other ones that we've done, if there was issues, we did talk about working with the town and the applicant if there's issues to post the road for no parking. Most of the access for this is a private drive, but there is a small section, and I'll show it to you what is town road. if we think that there's an issue with parking, we can certainly, you can certainly in the discussions and a condition is make sure that if it's necessary to coordinate with the town, and if we need to have it posted, no parking. The measures which let's see. Oh, and the only other thing with going back to adjacent property owners right now, the applicant is proposing that any amplified music will be ended by 11 o'clock p.m. And so he can speak to that when we get through that. With measures regarding sanitation, domestic stormwater, drainage control, and other necessary utilities. We have in the past, there's a standard that says that there aren't public bathrooms, and so usually it's a porta potty that's brought on, and we require that that one of those, at a minimum of one per every 75 guests, be provided, and so that would be part of the event plan, and there will also be a permit that's required, so we understand what's happening there. So one per every 75 guests. If in the future the applicant wants to put in any kind of permanent facilities like a porta potty or an outhouse over a tank, in-ground tank, then we can talk about that, but that would be just a permitting issue as well. Measures which have been taken to provide sufficient off-street parking. The applicant is showing in the main parking lot, which is kind of westerly of the barn, 123 spaces, and he's got an overflow parking that's south of south and westerly of the barn area, and that is he's proposing 70 spaces in there, and we'll go over the parking again when we get to those maps. Measures which have been taken to provide access road or access points. Currently, there's a driveway serving the barn and the main parking lot, and the applicant will provide access and overflow parking via internal driveways. So once he gets off the town road, everything is a private drive, and the applicant will be providing and improving any kind of access to get from the barn to the parking, to the overflow parking, and just in and around the site. Measures which have been or will be taken to minimize or eliminate traffic congestion and other hazards related to traffic. In previous and similar requests, the board has asked for a parking plan with temporary signage, and maybe something at the end to help visitors find the parking as they come in, but also a wayfinding, so that an arrow says which way back to Knapp or which way back, so that they understand where they're going. They're going to show up in the daylight. They're going to leave at dark. Most of them haven't been out here before, and it's easy to get disoriented. So maybe something out there just so they know which way to turn to get back out on the state highway. Measures which have been taken to prevent and control offensive odors, fumes, dust, noise, vibration, anything that will constitute a nuisance to adjacent property owners in the immediate vicinity. Really, the only thing that we have really had concern about is noise. And in the past, the board has required that any kind of amplified music be limited to indoors. And that the speakers for that amplified music be oriented so it doesn't point to the big door that's open, if there is a big door that's going to be open, so that music is contained inside, and that it ends at a reasonable time. I have some stuff down below that we can talk about decibels in terms of some conditions, in terms of things that we've provided in the past, so you can understand just noise and maybe how to put a condition to control that noise so that it doesn't become a nuisance. The measures which have been or will be taken to prevent or control lighted signs, other lights that constitute a nuisance. Right now, the applicant is not proposing any additional lighting. In his report, in his application, he did indicate that if lighting was to be added, that lighting will be shielded, and then that light will be aimed downward to only illuminate the areas that's necessary. And so that's also something that traditionally has been a condition. days and hours of operation. The applicant does not limit the days of the week for events and indicates they will be open no earlier than 10 a.m. Amplified music will end by 11. There's no indication as to when the event will end, but normally as soon as the music is kind of dies down, people get the hint and they start figuring the way it's time to go home. Other information deemed necessary by the zoning administrator or the BOA. I have none. You guys may ask for some other information, so I have none. So consideration and concerns. Well, let me just stop right there and say, is there any questions about that portion of the staff report?
Crystal, do you have any question? Barb?
I had a question about lighting for the parking lots. Is that included?
Currently, and when the applicant gets sworn in, he can speak to this specifically, but currently there is nothing in the plan that says that the parking lot will be lighted. It is a long distance from the farthest stall to the garage, and so there may be concern. Maybe there's a guide or something that would escort people to and from their vehicle that has a light. But currently, no, there is no lighting proposed for the parking lot.
Jill?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, Tim?
No, I'll just be interested to get an eyeball on those maps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Patrick, any comment so far?
Nothing so far.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, we'll go on to concerns and considerations and noise. I'm not going to go through all of this. I think you had a chance to read it. But in the past, you know, what the board has done is set a decibel, you know, so that if there is a complaint, that there's a way to monitor whether or not the complaint is valid. And about the only way you can validate a noise complaint is to set a decibel reading. You know, how loud is it? And just so we understand that my office may get notice of a complaint, but those complaints are going to be forwarded to the sheriff's department when a complaint is done. And the sheriff, they have a decibel reading machine, so they could measure that and see, you know, where it is when they're there. So normally, if we're going to do that, you know, where they take that reading from is going to be important, you know, in terms of is it within 100 feet of where the noise generator, usually that's you know, the amplified music, is it at the property line? And so and usually, you know, 70 decibels is a pretty decent rating for music. I mean, that allows you to have, you know, a conversation. You may have to speak up pretty darn loud, but you can have a conversation with music in the background at 70 decibels. And so that's kind of the standard. But you can certainly go above or below that. And then again, like I said, the distance from the source of the noise is important, and also you know, how long should it be left going, you know, and the applicant is saying 11 o'clock. And so we can talk about noise and decibels in more detail when it gets time for your folks' discussion. Lighting, we've talked about lighting and what would happen if there is additional lighting. Hours of operation and length of stay. The applicant is proposing, you know, in the morning, and then at 11 o'clock at night is when the music will stop. It doesn't really say when it's shut down, but it would be I think it'd be very important for the board to make sure that as a condition that we understand that overnight camping and overnight stays, that's not permissible, and so that everyone needs to go home except for the applicant when the event is over. Scale of the event. I think this is something that that you may have to have discussion with. In the past, we've been around 225 guests, and we've had other applicants that have requested larger venues. This applicant, Mr. Stauffer, is looking at maybe up to 300. In the past, we've limited it to 225, and so that's something. And I did send you some stuff about what we've done at other these other hearings, so you can see what that is. So that may be something that you may have a discussion with the applicant on. And then an event plan. We've always asked that the board require the applicant to provide my office an event plan that says, it would be a calendar, if you will, the date and time of each location, how many guests they're anticipating, who's going to be the emergency contact person. Is there going to be music? If there's a parking attendant or any kind of parking kind of language that the board requires, that they speak to that. Sanitation, the number of bathrooms provided. Is there going to be potable water provided, drinking water, because there isn't a well on site, and so what happens there? If there's going to be any food preparation, to make sure that in this event plan that they talk about who's going to prepare the food. And usually it's a catering service, but just as long as we understand that it is a catering service, we don't necessarily need to know the name of the caterer, because we have a contact information to get hold of the applicant, but we do need to know that they will be catering. And that you may have to talk to the Dunn County Health Department in order for a license for that. Alcohol, this is a dry town, and so and you might want to speak to the applicant. I think he's had some discussions with the town about what that means, and if there is alcohol, how it can be dispensed. I think if you bring your own, it's okay, but we can talk to the applicant. But in a dry town, this may not be of issue, but you may want to just kind of put it in there just in case the town changes from a dry town to allowing alcohol, that at least you've already addressed that if it comes to pass. And others, public safety issues, emergency vehicles, ingress, egress. I think that's probably the most important piece of that would be in relation to the parking areas, making sure that there is a way that people can get parked, so that their people don't double park other people in, because believe it or not, they will do that if it's a closed space, if you don't let them. And B, so that there is a clear driving aisle, so that if there is an emergency, that vehicles can get in and out. And then temporary use permit, and we spoke about how that works and when that happens, and the need for that. And so with every special exception, we do in our ordinance, we do allow the towns to weigh in on it. It's not that the towns get to approve or disapprove, but they can be in support, or they can object to this, and then we would like to know what their objections are. We did get some, and I don't know if I attached those minutes. I got them late. I put it in here. I don't know remember if I sent you folks the minutes or not, but we have minutes from the town that they are in support of this application. And so staff, our recommendation is to approve, but with some conditions that we can't control a lot of these things. And so we ask that as you go through, that you maybe just kind of step down through the outline that I went through, and make sure that if there are question marks, that the board addresses those. And certainly if you don't, and it's something that I think is at least something to be brought to your attention, I'll let you know, and then the board can act accordingly. So that is my staff report. So are there questions on that before we get into some of the maps?
Crystal,
No questions yet.
Barb,
None.
Jill,
No, none.
Tim,
None yet.
Patrick? Patrick?
Nothing yet.
All right. So let's,
I'll probably, you want to keep going, Bob, or you want me to swear Tim in?
well, let me finish with the mapping so I can kind of finish the big picture, and then we can swear the applicant in, and then I can reference back to the map so that you guys
Okay.
have the big picture, and then we can swear the applicant in. So I think what I'll start with is so here is, that's the 40 acres, and can everyone see my little arrow? That's the barn, that's the event structure, and this parcel is parcel B. That's going to be where the secondary parking is going to be. And just to give you some context, here's Knapp, so the village of Knapp, and so it's about I think maybe close to 2.5 miles from the center of Knapp out to where the property is. So if we zoom up on here, so as I said, these are the two parcels. If we look at some of the things that I spoke about before, so here's a pond that was already there. It's I don't think it's natural, but it's there, and we're just going to deal with it. Here is the other property, and a portion of that property is impacted by wetlands. And you'll see when I get to the other maps that show the parking in this area, that the applicant is proposing parking to be kind of near the northern edge of this property and out of the wetlands. And so this is the property. Here's the two neighbors that are in proximity, and so this neighbor is the one they are there seasonally, according to the applicant, and I think it's Gilman. Yes, these Mr. and Mrs. Gilman, and then this one is Tim Middlestat. So those are the two. We did send notices all the way out to people, way out into here, just to make sure that we caught neighbors. We went way beyond what we're supposed to, just so that we made sure that neighbors were aware of it. I'll show you the 10-foot contour so you can see it. So how the property is. So this is the 40 acres. Here's the barn again. Very, very steep slopes going up here, very steep slopes going up here. This valley, this is where the parking will be. This is also where the stream, there's a temporary stream, and we'll talk about a crossing that needs to happen in here. And then over in this area, it's very flat, and this is where the additional parking and the event venue is in here in the flat areas. So that's topography, the wetlands. If we look at now, a little bit bigger picture, just showing it. So here's the event barn. Here's the wetland. This is the access that comes into here, and from this point down to here, it crosses the railroads, and here's where it connects with State Highway 12. And so that's kind of the overview for access. Blowing it up a little bit. So here's the event barn, and here, as I said, this is where they'll come in. There's the event barn, and you'll see on the application, and I'll get to that, there's an area here for tents. That isn't for overnight camping. That's in case, for outdoor seating, just to keep the elements off of people, and maybe another small tent area here. And then general parking is up in this area. And so if we go to the parking areas, and then we go to the stream crossing. So here's the perennial stream that comes down, and somewhere in this area there needs to be a crossing to get to that parking. I'm guessing, because we didn't look at this earlier, but if we look at coming down, and he's going to be coming from here, and a road is going to come somewhere through here to get to this parking. I'm not sure where this stream, how it ends up down into this ditch, and so there may need to be another crossing, and we'll research that both with the applicant and with the state when we get those discussions going. So the other thing, so now that you have kind of a big picture, this is here's the road coming in up to, and there's the barn, and there's the venue area, and then parking lot A and parking lot B is down here. And so this is a little blow up from the applicant. He's proposing that there will be some handicap parking close to the venue. A tent area, again, tenting, not, to protect people from the elements. It isn't a campground, and maybe a larger one up here. It might be maybe outdoor eating. The applicant can speak to what those tent areas are a little bit more in his presentation. And so here's parking lot A, and so here's where right here is where somewhere in here we're going to need a crossing to get over the stream. And you can see that he's calling for 123 spaces. And when I spoke before that there's needs to be some sort of a parking plan, and maybe somebody to help these people park, or there needs to be something out in this area so that people know, how to get into here, because if you leave them to their own devices, everyone will park right down here and no one can get up here. So parking is going to be important to understand the plan and how he's going to coordinate and make sure that people can find a parking space, and then how do they get from there, down to the venue. It could be quite a hike, but maybe they're just very healthy people. And so we're talking, so this is the overflow parking or additional parking. And so right here where you can see this kind of a different shaded area, that's about the area of the wetland. And so the applicant is proposing that his parking would be out of the wetlands, and we'd make sure that when it is laid out, that indeed it is out of the wetlands. And so that is pretty much everything that I have to share with you from what I know about the application and the maps. So before we turn it back over to the chair and maybe swear in the applicant, is there something that anybody wants to see a little bit more detail on or have questions about?
I do, if I can, Bob.
It's the chair needs to recognize you.
Oh,
Yep. Go ahead, Tim.
all right. Thanks, Mark. Could you show me where this little bit of township road is on this map?
Okay, so perfect. Thank you, Tim. So this purple line right here, so this comes off of Highway 12, crosses the railroad tracks. That is the extent of the town road as we know it. From this 40 here, it's a private drive, or at least it's not listed on our records as being a town road. So just this little piece of 751st Ave, and the applicant could speak to that maybe in a little more detail, but hopefully that at least answers your question.
All right, thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions for Bob?
I do. This is Crystal. On the zoomed out view, Bob, can you show me the extent of the land ownership? I think we talked about these two tracks being the tracks in question, but I'm just curious, besides the little triangles that show other houses, if Tim owns most of the land surrounding.
Yeah. So let me, if I understand you would like to see all the holdings of Mr. Stauffer?
All the ones that might be near here. He may own land far and wide, but connected to the site.
Yeah. Okay. So let me just do this. And if this doesn't answer your question, let me know. So I'm going to select all. Let me do this again. It didn't quite. want to get out to here. I don't know why it keeps. So there. So now I can zoom in and we can see. So here's the town road and here's the driveway. These are the Gilmans, and then Mr. Stoffer owns this piece of land. We've talked about this one. This is the parking area, and then he owns. These aren't quite 40s, but this is also the county line right here. So
Thank you.
does that help you?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions? If there's no other, we're gonna keep going.
I'm finished,
Okay.
Mr. Chair. You might want to swear the applicant in, and then and if he has something to add to it, it's back to you, Mr. Chair.
Yep. Tim, I'll swear you in. Do you solemnly swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay,
Mr. Stoffer, you might want to unmute your mic now so that you don't have to hold the space bar.
Can you hear me now?
yep, we got you. Looking at the land that you own, Tim, I can see the town road obviously goes across land that's why the town road is there, to get access. Is there an easement then across from the end of the town road to your property?
So basically, at the driveway of Chris Gilman's home there, it's like a modular home or actually like a trailer home. Right
Yep.
there at his driveway is where they stop their improvements, their snow plowing, etc. From there on in, it's considered mine to maintain and take care of. It's still paved. I'm guessing back in the day when there was a homestead by that barn that they probably maintained and improved it. You basically past my house and between 100 to 100, 200 feet shy of the barn is where the asphalt stops and it becomes the area where I propose to have like handicap parking. It's a gravel hard pack area. Yes, right there. Thank you. And so I have pavement all the way back to there, but I am required to maintain it from Chris Gilman's driveway back. So it's just a direct flow all the way through.
Okay.
So to answer the question though, from this point, from Mr. Gilman's driveway to the other end of Mr. Gilman's property, this piece of land, this piece of road, who owns that? Is it an easement? Do we know?
I don't know. I guess there would be one. I'm not really sure, I guess at that point. I was thinking that it was Township Road until my property line,
Yeah.
but there's no place for them to turn around back on my place. So they stop and back into Chris's and turn around and go back out.
Mr. Chair, if I could.
Yeah.
One thing that we could do through our office is we could go and work with the town and find out exactly where the town road ends, because it would be I think it's important to recognize this piece of land because it does go across. Well, and this does too, goes across other people's property. But if there isn't an easement, it may be in everyone's best interest that an easement is worked on. And so so maybe one of the conditions, if you think about it when we get there, is to have staff work with the applicant and just find out ownership of this road, how far the town really does own.
Yeah, I was just wondering because it went across usually the town road to get access like this, normally the town road would go to the property owner's line, because it's going across other properties.
Yeah. So we can look into that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a big issue, but it just for, Tim, it might be just good to know. The other question I have, Tim, is, Bob's talked about these intermittent creeks or streams or whatever. When you get up there, how do you get across there now?
So basically, I mean, it almost looks bigger than what it is. And it's more or less, okay, I guess a little history on this. So I've owned the property roughly 7 years. The first 3 to 4 years, there was nothing there. I had dry access all the way back through the fields. In the last 3 years, the water table has grown some. And when talking to DNR, they admit that, yes, there's lots of places where the water table has elevated. I asked them how long that would be because I'm like, well, this has grown to be a temporary or intermittent stream from time to time. I mean, now it's basically, it's not even 6 inches wide and not flowing because it's, pretty much frozen. But it's grown through the last couple of years, and it could be in 3 years from now, the water table goes down and it becomes dry again. But because it's so small and so shallow, I mean, I just drive across it. But I told like DNR that I need to address it anyway, because if this is going to stay around now for a while, I need to get my tractors, four-wheelers, ATVs across anyway to access my field and back, as well as this is where the field road is that goes up through the woods to get to my 20 acres up on top as well. So I need access no matter what.
Mr. Chair, if I could interject just a little bit of information for the board, just so that so this is the stream that he's talking about, and the way that zoning figures out if we are going to regulate it from a shoreline is we go back to the USGS quad map, which were done way back in probably the 40s or 50s. And if it shows up, and so here it is, here's the property, here's the barn. If it shows up on the quad map as either, a blue line, here's Wilson Creek down here, it's a blue line. These other ones are intermittent, but they feed to Wilson Creek. But regardless, if it's a blue line, whether it's intermittent or it's solid, our shoreline ordinance says that qualifies as a navigable stream, and therefore we regulate to it. And so regardless of the time of year, and I agree with Mr. Stoffer that there are going to be some years where it could be flowing quite heavy. Other years it may not ever flow. But regardless, this is why that it brought it to my attention that we're going to need to have some sort of a permit from the state, because we regulate it as a navigable stream.
Okay, Tim, do you have anything that you want to present to the board in addition to what Bob talked about?
Well, I guess the only thing I could add there is like where it shows that blue line stopping back there, that essentially is what it in fact happens, is it stops and then goes underground, and it never makes it to my house unless it's, snow melt event.
Yeah.
So again, working with the DNR, they're the ones that are going to, and they may end up contacting my office and we'd work together. But I think that we would need to have the DNR involved, and if in fact the DNR agrees that it stops here and it doesn't go any further, then maybe a crossing isn't required. But that's really going to be a call for the DNR to make rather than zoning. We will work with them, provide them any information that we have, and if they need us to do something, we'll work with both the applicant and the DNR on this.
Tim, go ahead.
To add to that, I've been in conversations. I first contacted a Mike Rogney, and then he put me in contact with the DNR person by the name of Dan Harrington. He's the one that's reviewing this, and I've talked to him I initiated contact with him a couple weeks ago and tried following up with him. He says he's very busy. He said there's a good chance that something would be needed here, but he needed to do some reviews on it and didn't know if there was some ag conditions that applied or what, and I'm just waiting to hear back from him. So the conversation has been initiated. It's under review, and we're just waiting to hear back. I was hoping to get something from him for prior to tonight's meeting, but he hasn't responded yet.
Okay, does any of the board have any comments at this time?
I have a comment. Tim Lenow, Mark.
Yep, go ahead.
Due to the fact that this township road crosses the railroad tracks, is there sufficient signage in that area there to let people know that they're going across the tracks?
Or not?
Well, it's not gated, it's not lighted, it's you know, the railroad, there's probably a sign that says railroad crossing, and that's probably the extent of it.
Okay.
Go ahead, Tim.
It's actually the road goes underneath the railroad trestle. So
Oh.
there's no
Oh.
concern or
Yeah.
issues of going over top the rail. You're going underneath it.
Oh, there's a bridge
okay.
there.
Yes.
All right. So there's no issue then for party goers coming and going then.
Right. And I guess to add to that railroad bed there helps right off of 12 when it goes by my place, because essentially it's like a 20-foot tall buffer even to Highway 12. So it totally has me, you cannot even see my place from 12 because there's a 20-foot high railroad bed next to you, adjacent to you on the north side. So I'm tucked away, you can't even see me.
So if I turned the contours on so you can see these are the contours, and they do go downhill to Mr. Stauffer's property. So this area is elevated.
Mark,
Jill, is that you?
yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mark. We live on the other side of Knapp, so we drove out there. And yes, you do go under the railroad tracks. This is, I didn't even know that area existed. I know the road's pretty darn good around now. And it is very secluded. But it's certainly a one-way driveway, that's for sure.
Well, it's a dead end road. Yeah.
It's definitely a dead-end road, yes.
Yep. I think, Bob, unless the board thinks we should go a different direction, let's go back to the steps for approval. And can you put up your staff report? And yeah, go down. Yeah, go down, Bob. I think we. Just a minute. Does any of oh, Crystal's raising her hand. Crystal, go ahead.
I have one little question. Tim, did you decide for the parking lot up top or on the other side of the stream to be the main parking just because of its size, that you'd accommodate more cars compared to the other lower, not lower, but lower on our picture spot? Did we hear how many spots are in that parking B area?
So
73. Go ahead, Tim.
yes, I guess the northern lot is much closer to the barn venue and lends itself a lot, because from the north or northwest of the barn itself, and like where I mentioned where the tent area could be, that could become parking, as well as a tented or canopy area for like a pavilion. So it lends itself to be a lot more tucked in the back in that valley and secluded that everything is. Not that the one to the south isn't, but that's why I just figured because of its proximity, it's much closer where all the activity is going to be, and much secluded back in that valley.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Anybody else have a question before we go back to
Yes. Tim, how would people, if you had to, they had to use the overflow parking to the south, how would they get from that parking lot to the venue?
So, obviously I plan on it being a footpath type thing, but also in addition, if there's people that need assistance, I mean, we would have, electric golf carts. I plan on having a tractor with a wagon on back to bring people back and forth as well on an as needed basis. I got an old 30-20 in the barn, which will work perfect for that, and a wagon to accommodate.
Thank you.
Does, do you have a field road to that area now?
Yep, I do have a field road with access to that overflow parking area on the south side.
Okay.
Is it pretty much here, Tim, that where my arrow is?
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else? Otherwise, I'm going to go back to the analysis and we're going to proceed forward then. Okay, Bob, does any of the board have any question on the analysis part from the staff analysis? If there is none, if there is, speak up, because I'm going to keep going. Then keep going down, Bob. Then we go to the left side of the page, and I think we've already covered that the DNR is going to have to decide how you're going to get to that back parking lot.
And maybe the DOT that I haven't had a chance to talk to the DOT. There may be an issue with the, I don't know what their concerns may be, but I think it's important to recognize that we will be connecting to the state highway, so the DOT will weigh in.
Just remember some of these things as we go forward, because typically we would put a condition that the permit is approved pending DNR approval or that type of thing for the parking access, or in this case, Bob, the DOT. I don't think there'll be a problem there, but
but I do owe them a chance to weigh in.
Yep. But anyway, normally we would just add them as conditions. On going down here, the sanitary permit, Bob, I don't know that we necessarily have that in the motion. I think that's just part of the rule.
It's a sanitary code. You can. I would think it would be appropriate that if there is a motion to approve when it comes down to sanitation, that until such time that permanent facilities, whether it's an outhouse or some sort of a privy, is placed on the site, that portable parties at 1 per 75 guests, I think it's appropriate, at least in the motion. The permitting piece of it, we'll take care of that, just because it's required anyway. So
yeah, that's what I thought. The floodplain issue doesn't exist. So like I said, the stream crossing permit, that is out of our purview. That'd be the DNR would have to deal with that. I think normally we would put in the motion the time, and in this case, Bob, I don't know that there needs to be a start time. As far as I can see, we're more interested in the noise level later at night.
Yep, the applicant provided that. We haven't really, I don't think we've ever held someone to say, well, it says 10 o'clock, you can't have anybody show up at 9 o'clock, So, I mean, it's usually, You're right, it's usually the other end of the spectrum that there's a concern about.
Yep. Going on then, we're talking about sanitation again, and we've already covered that. And then we've talked about the parking lots and how we're going to get there.
Mr. Chair, if I could on this, maybe we could ask the applicant to maybe talk about how people are going to know where to park. I mean, you know, if you look at this, that's a, you know, even on a paved surface, that's a fairly complicated parking arrangement, you know, when you have striped lines. And so I don't know what the applicant's plans are to make sure that, you know, that we know that this is the end of this parking bay and that it's double loaded here and it's single loaded here and it's single loaded on this side, both from emergency access, but also just so that you can actually get 123 cars in there.
Tim, do you want to speak to that, or?
Yes, I planned on laying, I mean, my design there is the 10 by 20, so it's the larger spaces. So there should be plenty of room. And I planned on using like wooden lath to start out with it could have, you know, a red or orange tape along the back there, and then have ones down on the corners so they can see where their spaces are at. Or I could use some, you know, temporary painting on the grass too, or something, or lime. I'm flexible, whatever works, but I realize that I'm going to need to have signage as they come in the driveway. Of course, in the wedding planning or event planning, I would have a map indicating such so that they could pass out to people, etc. And but I can have signage there as they go back past the barn, parking this direction with an arrow, and then as they get there, just start showing them the parking spaces and delineate them with wooden lath.
Yeah, you'd probably have to almost have a parking attendant or something.
Yep.
So if that one's full, they don't just keep on going up there.
Yeah. I'd want the parking attendant anyway with like on a golf cart and stuff. So if somebody needs a ride or whatever, we just bring them back.
Yeah, the other thing that we've had, or at least had some discussion of, I don't know that we necessarily put it in as a condition or anything, but since this is basically going, it's probably just sod, and if you get a lot of rain, I know we've had issues sometimes where people get stuck in the mud, and so that could be an issue for you to think about. I know for the creek crossing or for the intermittent stream, like you said, the DNR might require a culvert there, but it might be better if they would allow you to put lime rock so the water would actually run over top of it.
Yeah, just a ford. Yeah.
Yeah, just something to drive over rather than have it raised that way. But anyway, that because that has to do with emergency services as well. You know, they need to get around. So
along those lines, before the applicant kind of chimes in on your comments, Mr. Chair, if I could.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Mr. Soffer, do you plan on doing any kind of improvements to this area? And the only reason I ask is because if there is going to be grading and extensive grading and maybe some surfacing put in, is that we want to make sure that we would see an erosion control plan if you're going to disturb that area. If your plan is to leave it how it goes and see how things work, that's fine. But just realize that if you don't do that grading and improvements with this permit, or within 1 year of this permit, then we would require an additional permit in order for you to do those improvements at a later time. So just as long as I'm very clear on that.
So in the permit request, about the only thing I planned on keeping it grassy for dust suppression and no worries there. I think I did mention that I would add gravel in soft areas if need be, because obviously as time went on, I haven't done anything like that yet, so it'd be new. So I'm just projecting that maybe there are going to be soft spots, like Mark mentioned, from rain events, etc. I'd like to be able to add gravel in those soft spots. I know there can be some, and then I know there's other areas prominently where most of that parking is, it's pretty solid. It's more like getting to that point is where I might need to have gravel, which is basically to the width of a road access to get to it. But I didn't plan on doing any grading. It's pretty relatively flat the way it is now and well draining. And the only thing I was probably going to do was maybe cut some trees along the edge that are overgrown that most people do as maintenance anyway into a field. Does that help answer your question?
Yep, I would just recommend that, after the, as you get close to the, and I'm assuming that the board approves this, but as you get close to that 1-year anniversary, if you think that you're going to be needing to do adding some gravel or something, contact my office so that we can just extend this permit rather than make you go through another permitting process.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Bob, can we go back to the other screen?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. So you left off right about here.
Yep, we talked about the parking, driveway exists, and then we go down to,
We talked about this, and now I think it would be on this page now, Mr. Chair.
yep. Okay, now the noise, I don't know, we've typically went with 70 decibels for noise at, if I recall properly, I think at 100 feet or from the barn or from the, because we've approved wedding barns before.
Yeah. You've
Go
done it
ahead, Bob.
you've done it 2 ways. One, there was a distance of maybe might have been 100 or 200 feet, and then there was one where it was at a property line because there was the barn, the event structure butted up against a residential unit that was shared a property line. So you've done it both ways, at a property line or at a distance. And I don't think that the distance was and I'm working off of memory. A couple 100 feet is what I recall. But as if you look at
The topography, is,
and the neighbors, this seems to be, if you were going to do a property line, this seems to be, well, just measure it here. And if you can hear it from here and these people are complaining, that's some pretty loud music's happening out there. But again, a couple 100 feet, just so that you can see how far, a couple 100 feet is. So I'm at the barn right now, and right about to the edge of that driveway, that's about 200 feet. So just so you have a sense of scale.
yep. Crystal?
We have 4 venue barns so far in Dunn County, and we have so many exceptions. And I'd like to recognize that there's nothing different about this guy's request than anybody else. And I'd like to try to boil us down to the situations that are specific to an applicant, like the stream. And I actually think that the question about whether or not he officially has access to his driveway is important. I hope you do, Tim. If it's owned by him, or if there's an easement, or if we can make sure we get there. I don't want to allow a business that requires access from someone else's land. But I'd like to try to take the average of what we've done so far. And Bob was great to get me the exceptions that we made at the 4 other times. And most often we've used at lot line, which I think Tim would have no problem with at all. It will not be loud at the lot line due to the way his property is set. So I think 65 or 70 decibels at the closest property line would perhaps start to move us down a path where we know what to ask of these folks. I kind of looked at all 4 to try to get at what the average that we've asked is, because I don't think that there's much else way to go about this other than what feels fair to the other folks. And knowing that we have unprecedented farm loss in our area, I think these kinds of requests will start to come up more and more often.
Yeah, I agree with you, Crystal. I think the other thing that we look at is how close the residents are. I think the last one that we did, there was somebody really close.
There was.
To that property. And there were several other that were reasonably close.
Yeah.
And, this one here with the topography, I don't think that sound's gonna go very far,
Right.
up those slopes. Tim? Go-
To add on to what Crystal was saying, I believe I had findings of the conditions from some of them before, and I believe 3 of the 4 of them that she mentioned, I believe I read that it said 65 decibels at the property line, and I'm perfectly okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty loud, really.
I just want to suggest that we don't reinvent ourselves every time. And I think that there's some average language like get the annual permit, have an event plan, make the lighting downlit, no overnight guests. The person limit, Tim mentions 300. We've approved 225 for 3 of them and 300 for our most recent one. So I don't know how we go about figuring out which way we go there. And then I think 1 toilet per 75 guests is really smart. It seems like the only outstanding thing we might have is the licensed bartender or whether or not you can have sales of alcohol. And I think a private party where you serve alcohol is not a problem, even in a dry place usually. We have not limited all of the venues from selling alcohol, and that's where you make your money as a retailer. I know that. So figuring out how to have the right language there. And then my only other one was that Tim mentioned up to 3 times a week. And we've limited most, I think maybe all of them to 3 times a month. And that would change your business plan quite a bit for how much revenue you'd bring in a month. So I think all of them have a limit closer to 3 times a month. So Tim, do you want to speak to that? If you were limited to more like where the other folks are limited, how that would affect you?
Well, I guess at this point, I can't really speak to it because I don't know how busy this will become. Obviously, I don't want to limit myself. I thought 3 per month was definitely very limiting. Especially it seems nowadays that there's a lot of venues that instead of having a full weekend or a big wedding, it's becoming more popular to have like a Friday and a Sunday wedding, which I didn't want to restrict myself. Well, that would be 2 on just one weekend. So
Right.
I'd like to have more flexibility. Do I need 3 per week? No, that's probably heavy, but I certainly would like to have the opportunity to do it a lot more than 3 times per month.
And Bob, do you know if we're really there anyway? Like some of these venues are selling out, so they're not. I mean, we said 3 times a week, but if we started paying attention, would we find that most of these folks are booked up every weekend?
No.
Did you,
We haven't-
Crystal,
Go ahead.
did you
Go ahead,
say,
Mark.
let me clarify. Crystal, did you say 3 times a month? I think 3 times a week.
We have mostly limited it to 3 times a month,
Okay.
which seems like not enough to turn a penny on it, you know? And I'm wondering, I drive by Govins on my way home and it doesn't seem like maybe they only do 3 times a month in June and July, you know?
Yep.
You know, some of these venues, Crystal, have other things other than weddings, you know, that happen, you know, throughout the course of the week. And so I think that, you know, that they were really trying to limit, you know, when we're talking about 3 events a month, I think I think the intent is that would be 3 large events where there's 200, you're expecting 200 plus people. You know, it's like Goldman's. I mean, they run a lot of different venues out there other than just the event barn going. So some of that is maybe hard to gauge. We haven't had anyone complain that there's been excessive goings on, and so we don't have staff to go and check on them, but we do look at their event plans, and they're pretty close to what asking them to do. And we haven't had anybody come in and say, I'd like you to reconsider. Can I come before the board and ask for a reconsideration? And so it may be prudent that you kind of follow what's going on. And if Mr. Stauffer or any of the others find that there is more business than what he's able to account for, you could certainly request the board to reconsider, or you could just say, no, it's fine, just continue on. So, but to answer your question, we haven't had any complaints about the number of events, nor have we really gone out and monitored to make sure that the event plan is followed to the T. We just don't have the staff for that. So,
Thanks.
Mr. Chair, I've got a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
All right. Tim, has there been a fire marshal number of people, maximum people that your facility can take?
So he referenced some sizes. He didn't give me the final report yet, but he did do a preliminary. The one number that he came up with that he did say was that if the said property, given the occupancy load, were to be more than 300, then a fire detection system would be required. So he kind of had that limit there that if we cross that threshold, more stuff would be needed.
Okay, so you're limited by what he says at this time.
That's the limitation. He said that I would need to do improvements to above that. He might give me limitations per different areas in the barn, like up top versus down below. But he said being an open venue and being able to have the canopies and 10 areas outside for like pavilions, he said that's unlimited. There's no restriction there. So
Okay.
Unless you force everyone into the barn, there's no limitation per se, other than a 300 for being a fire suppression system needed type thing.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions here this time? If not, we'll go down. I think we've kind of covered the erosion control measures and such. I think, Bob, haven't we? The DNR is going to deal with that. And lighting, I don't know. You might want to have at least some lighting out in that parking lot. I don't know. Any discussion on that?
Mark, Barbara Lyon here. I'm an insurance man's daughter, so I'm always thinking liability. And I would think that some sort of lighting might be required under insurance. I don't know. Have you investigated any kind of insurance requirements, Tim?
I have not. I figured once, I got the permits to do so and then contact them, I would just, do what's required.
Well, let's move on. Does anybody have any other discussion on lighting? No? I think the erosion control, I think really the DNR is going to deal with that, Bob, unless he really disturbs something, then he's going to be coming to you. He doesn't, the last one is days and hours. This is what Crystal was talking about, more days than hours. What is the feeling of the board as far as events? 3 events per month seems to be quite restrictive, to me anyway. I think, I don't really remember putting that in, but I wasn't on the board for all of those, so at least I don't think I was. So let's discuss that a little bit. Crystal has spoken. Tim, do you have any comment on that?
Well, the thing of it is that I think you're going to be with events, and you want to give your clientele flexibility. And so Tim had spoke about a Friday, Sunday event, that type of thing. I'm kind of looking at it from the standpoint of maybe 3 weekends a month, where the clientele can pick a Friday, Saturday, or a Sunday, that type of thing, but not necessarily meeting, just one event per weekend or per time slot. I don't know. What
Yeah.
does the other board members think about that?
Jill, you have any comment?
I just certainly like that better. I can't imagine being able to run a business with 3 events a month.
Yeah,
And
that doesn't make sense to me.
it doesn't. It's just, the reason you're doing it is maybe you love doing it, but you want to make some money.
And as a person who has catered many weddings, including the lovely wedding of Patrick McCoy's daughter, there's only so many of these that Tim's going to want to do in a month. I mean, it's a lot of work to house 200 people who have high expectations for an evening in one night. So this is a seasonal business. There's a short amount of time that you can book these events. And the last one we did in 2018, we didn't limit it. And I feel that we should not limit the number of events. It's like if somebody wants a tiny little wedding and he already has 2 big ones or 3 big ones booked, and he has to say no to that. I just think that we want to try to encourage the business to work if the effort is going to be made. So I kind of feel like that limit should either be much more liberal or just removed. People aren't going to want to get married on Tuesday at noon, so it's going to be limited naturally by the calendar.
Is there any discussion on not putting a limit on? Bob?
We can't hear you.
Bob, you're muted.
I've got a comment, Patrick.
Yeah,
I would agree with Crystal. I don't think we should really try to micromanage or limit
I agree.
the number of events that are occurring in any calendar month. I think that the economics of it will, and how well the venues run, I think that'll dictate what they can handle. And as long as neighbors aren't complaining or there aren't issues about parking lot erosion or dangerous traffic when people are exiting, I don't think that we should be prescribing that kind of number of events per month.
yeah, I honestly don't remember doing that. So I don't know, maybe my name's on there someplace, but I don't remember doing that. So Bob, we are not hearing you.
Bob, you need to unmute yourself. And then if we still can't hear you, there should be a button on the string of your headset. We got to first unmute yourself in Zoom. Click
And
unmute
Bob
in
lost
Zoom,
his
Bob.
voice.
There we go.
Okay, now look at the line on your headset. Is there a button?
Yeah,
There
there we
you
go.
Is it on now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
now you're on.
All right. So I think I leaned forward and turned it off when I leaned forward on my desk here. I don't disagree with any of the conversation. I would only ask that if we go that route of unlimited or no limit, that I would reach out to those with a limit and see if they would like to come before the board to have that restriction removed, just so that they're on the same playing field.
I think, Bob, that if I don't remember putting a limit on,
Oh, I do.
but yeah, there may have been public comment from neighbors that they didn't want the disturbance as often as more often, I guess I would say. And the
think
board
that would've-
probably took that into consideration when we made those judgments.
Different board, different views on it, and so, but I do recall those conditions being placed, and so I think to be fair, I would reach out to those with that kind of restriction if you go this route, and just let them decide if they want to come back.
Yeah, because I don't know, from my view, at least the ones that I've been involved with, I think, at least for me, I think we always looked at the circumstance individually rather than as a group. You know, as far as the closeness of the neighbors, how and how much disruption it might be for the neighbor, and limited. If we did limit, it would have been limited according to some of the public comments that we probably heard and made a judgment from that. Anybody have any discussion further? Go ahead, Tim.
I guess I just like to add, I mean, I greatly appreciate not having a restriction. I think that would be superb. Do I know how many at this point? No, but as to comments, it's like, well, I would like this to be a business, and it is a feast or famine thing because it's going to be during the decent times of spring, summer, and fall. And then the rest of the time, you know, it's not going to be, you can't make money on it, obviously, because it's shut down. So it's very seasonal. I guess just to add to it, as Bob had mentioned, there has not been one concern or protest from somebody about it. So I would think that maybe there should be a feeling that opening it up shouldn't be a problem, with just a caveat that if there were to be complaints or concerns, that you would readdress it at that time and maybe put restrictions if I was a problem child type thing. That's my comment.
And that's always the case, you know, if it becomes a problem child, that our office would work with the landowner to bring them into compliance. And if we couldn't, then we would bring them back before the board and say, here, please help me.
Yeah, I think that's how that to be the proper procedure.
Yep.
Okay, is there any other questions or comments? We're kind of getting to the end of our list here. Anybody?
One concern that you might, Mr. Chair, is when it comes to music is maybe to restrict amplified music to inside the barn. That's what we've done in the others. But again, his location is much different. But just think about, you know, where that amplified music is going to be. And if you think it's important, it could be part of a condition.
Mark, unmute.
I must have hit something when I reached to shut off that other thing. Got too many things sitting by me here. Anyway, go ahead, Tim.
Yes, I guess Jill supported the fact that she was out there and saw that she didn't even know my place existed. I guess I want to reiterate that I am extremely secluded. It looks like I'm relatively close to 12, but you'll never see my place, and I'm tucked back in the valley there. So you have very little concern about me being recognized by neighbors because there's no other houses around there. So again, it's kind of thing with noise is, I'd like it to not have to be restricted to a closed inside barn unless I become a problem child and someone feels that it's bothering them.
Any response from anybody on the board? Basically, Tim, what we've tried to do is try to foresee problems that might arise and try to address them beforehand before they become a problem. I think, I guess what I would say is, if we did put some restriction on noise, I would say it'd probably be best if you had a, outside speaker going up toward the top parking lot where you're gonna have that tented area, rather than down toward 29 where you do have a neighbor across the road.
Absolutely.
Any comment?
I have a comment, Mark.
Go
To me
ahead.
now. Yeah, I think the property line, 65, 70 decibels on the property line, I think that may be a better and a more consistent measure of a noise issue. I would say that that's probably going to be a better way to go.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, Bob, scroll down on your thing here again. I think we're at the bottom.
We talked about noise, we talked about lighting, we've talked about the temporary use permit, hours of operation, length of stay, scale of the event, you've talked about that, an event plan, you've talked about that. I think that that's pretty much everything that we had in our staff report. I think you guys have at least touched on it.
I think we've covered it, and as far as the number of guests, I think some of the limiting factor has been what the fire inspector has permitted. So if we do, rather than put a number on there, we might want to have just a caveat in the motion that said, according to what is permitted by the fire marshal or whoever he's called. I don't know. Crystal, do you have something to say on that?
What makes you think I have something to say?
I thought you were going to talk.
I think that 300 is a fair number. It's the most recent one that we've said, and I think more than that does, it starts to rain or storm and everybody flies into the barn. You probably don't want more than what that fire guy number is. So I would be comfortable with 300. We've had 3 that we've said 225 and 1 that we've said 300. And I like Bob's idea of going back and inviting other people to get on an even playing field if we, set our rules straight.
Yeah,
I am ready to make a motion.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with 300 as long as it doesn't exceed the number of that the fire marshal deems safe.
But but according to Mr. Stoffer, it was over a certain threshold, then he needs to put some fire suppression in. It wasn't that the fire marshal limited to a number of people. It's what the applicant would have to do in order to crash that ceiling.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Go ahead, Crystal. You got a motion to make?
Okay.
Does anybody have any other discussion before Crystal makes a motion? Go ahead, Crystal.
It's going to be long.
Yep, I can see that.
I move to grant the special exception permit with the following exceptions. Conditions. Number 1, there will be no more than 65 decibels at the closest property line, and music will be off at 11 p.m. Number 2, there will be no overnight guests. Number 3, there will be 1 toilet per 75 guests. Number 4, there will be no more than 300 guests at an event. Number 5, any lighting improvements will be downlit. Number 6, an event plan will be submitted to, Bob, help me out.
Just to our office, at the beginning of the season.
To BOA at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
Number whatever, the applicant will provide or apply and receive a temporary use permit annually. Number 6, the applicant will prove that he has ownership or easement for the drive.
Has access, legal access.
Yep. Next, we will have the blessing of the state highway people.
DOT.
DOT, blessing of DOT. That's not the right word, but you know what I mean.
Yep, we do.
Okay. We will. We don't have to say anything about the DNR because they're going to do it anyway, right?
No, I think it would be
No.
appropriate for the
Okay.
crossing that's dealt
Yeah.
with.
Applicant will get appropriate DNR permitting.
Thank you.
And then there will be no parking on town roads. We didn't talk about that. I'm getting confused, but we had in the past stop signs. There will be appropriate stop signs up when customers are leaving the property or something.
And just for your information on that, that was the only time we had that was for the Govins when it was in the
Yeah.
Rusk over there, and they were exiting into a neighborhood.
Yeah,
And
okay, scratch that last part. There will be no alcohol sales and a licensed bartender if alcohol is served.
I would just say leave it up to the town, Crystal, and that if there is alcohol to be served, that a licensed bartender has to dispense it. That way, if it changes, then we're good to go.
If alcohol is to be served, a licensed bartender is serving it.
Correct.
I think that's it.
Good job, Crystal.
I had one just, and it's just a clarification and more for the applicant than for the condition. But when you do submit an event plan, we realize that schedules change over the course of 180 days. And so if your event plan changes and you add or delete something, we just ask that you simply just let our office know. Doesn't need to be in the condition. I just want the applicant to understand that we're flexible. We understand that things change.
Tim, did you want to speak to that?
Yes, I had two things, but this was one of the specific ones. And looking back through the other ones, because we do reference ones you've given and granted in the past, there was a condition where it was event planning of anything over 50 people. Is that what applies to everyone? Or can that be put in the minutes here per se? Because like if it was something smaller, so it's not everything that would need to be, I guess I'm just asking that as a request.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Events over 50 will be included in an event plan submitted to our office.
And the one other thing while we're on something like that is the overnight guests. That was another one I've seen where it said overnight guests. Other ones it just said there will be no overnight camping. Okay, so I 100% am down with the overnight camping. None of it will happen. But what if it's an event that is family related or something, and I'm going to have people stay at the house? I hate to have a clause where somebody's going to pick on me because I have people staying at the house because they're dear friends or family of mine. So is there any way we could just say no overnight camping and leave it open on that? You know, if I want to have guests in my home, that I'm allowed to do so?
You're allowed anyway to do so,
Anytime.
Tim. Anytime people can stay at your house, they can all stay there for all we care. We're concerned that there's going to be people camping or staying overnight in the barn, you know. But if you want to put them up in your house, and if you know that we don't get involved in that.
So I guess, yeah, that's if it could say no overnight camping, that makes it clear and no concern of it, I guess is what I'm saying.
My motion will stay no overnight guests because I don't want to see a giant RV park there. But I totally agree with Bob that you're allowed to have someone park an RV in your homestead property. If there's
Right.
12 of them lined up overnight, you'll start to hear the problem child stuff. That's my thinking on it. And I agree with you that the language has been kind of here and there at the on the past ones. There's a who is to say what camping is? But there are a bunch of laws that come into effect with boarding people, and I just want to try to make it clear that this is for an event that ends at 11.
Any other discussion? Any additions that people think should add to Crystal's motion? We didn't address water, but I'm assuming that if there's no well there, there's no water there. So I don't know that we need to talk about that. So okay, Crystal has made a motion. Andrea's got it all down. Is there a second to Crystal's motion?
I'll second Tim Lee now.
Is there any further discussion? If there's no discussion, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
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 I,
Opposed? The motion carries. So, Tim, you're good to go. It
Mr.
takes a
Stock-
long time. It takes a long time to go through some of this stuff, just so everybody's on the same page. So,
Yeah. Before
Um,
I let everyone go, Mr. Stauffer, if you could give me a call sometime later this week, and we could talk about our permitting process and how we're going to work with you on that. So just give me a call and we can work through those details. And for the board, I think you're going to be fairly busy here over the next 2 months at least. I do have one coming up next month for an expansion of a sand mine, but it's construction aggregate. People may not read that it says construction aggregate and may assume that it's industrial sand. So I don't know what to expect for that one next month. But I also have two other sand mine related requests that are coming up. I don't have the details yet, so I can't share them with you. But I would say that that it's important that you folks probably at least understand that the next 3 or 4 Mondays, first Monday or fourth Monday of the month, are going to be booked for BOA. So and the other thing I request is when I do send out an email with reply to all, if I'm looking for a time that you can be there, it's really just so that I can sleep at night knowing that I have a quorum. So as soon as if you could get back to me, that would be super. And then also, if you can always remember, all of this information that I send out is for everyone, and even responses. If you just reply to all, that way everyone else knows who's going to be there and what's going to happen. So if you could just please think about doing those things for me.
okay, Bob, you wanted me to remind you about the per diem.
Oh, yes. And so thank you, Mr. Chair. I will send via email a per diem sheet to everybody. You can sign it or fill it out and put an X if you want, or you can sign it and scan it and get it back, or you can figure out a way and we can get it. But I'll email one to you. You can email it back to me so I can get them into the clerk so those per diems do get turned in.
How many miles do we claim?
Boy. 0. Well, I'm just being honest, so but think about it. You didn't have to travel. That was nice. And so
that was nice.
So thanks everyone for this. Andrea, especially thank you. This is I don't know if this is better or worse for you, but I thought it worked pretty well. I don't know your comments on how the meeting went.
Zoom works great for me. I do it for court, and so I'm used to it, and the sound quality is usually really good. So I think it went well.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could just add 1 second, I thank you everyone for your time. Greatly appreciated. I think you were a great bunch to work with, and I'll be happy to do so in the future as well. An added thing with the Zoom, I almost like this better in comparison with going to the township meeting and talking to them about this venue in preempt of this, because we all had to wear masks, and it was less personable even to be 10 feet from someone but have a mask on, because you don't even get to see what they look like. So this is, I almost would think this is better than being in a mask situation. So
I agree.
Yeah.
Everybody.
All right.
Good luck in
Thank
your
you.
venue.
Thank